Welcome, friends of history, to a detailed dissection of one of the most catastrophic and transformative events in human history, World War I. Let's begin our journey together.
Imagine, if you will, a Europe teeming with ghosts of empires past, ancient grievances, and imagined glories. The continent was a mosaic of cultures, languages, and histories, each with its own story to tell and its own wounds to nurse. This was the breeding ground of nationalism, an ideology that could inspire incredible acts of self-sacrifice and unity among people who shared a common identity. Nationalism could bring people together under a single flag, a single anthem, and a single cause. Yet, it could also justify horrific acts of violence, as the fervor for national pride often turned into a destructive force. The same passion that united people could also divide them, leading to conflicts and wars. Europe in the early 20th century was a patchwork quilt of empires and ethnic groups, many with long memories of past glories and defeats. These memories were not just historical footnotes, they were living, breathing parts of the national consciousness. And with these memories came even longer lists of scores to settle. Old rivalries and historical grievances simmered just beneath the surface, waiting for the right moment to erupt. The Austro-Hungarian Empire, a sprawling, polyglot behemoth, struggled to hold itself together. It was a complex web of different nationalities, each with its own aspirations and frustrations. The Ottoman Empire, often referred to as the sick man of Europe, clung to its dwindling territories with a desperate grip. It was an empire in decline, facing internal and external pressures. Within these empires, nascent national identities yearned for self-determination. People began to dream of their own nations, free from the control of distant rulers, and they were willing to fight for it. The desire for independence and self-rule was a powerful motivator, leading to uprisings and armed conflicts. The assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand by a Serbian nationalist in Sarajevo in 1914 ignited a chain reaction that would consume all of Europe. This single event set off a series of alliances and enmities, plunging the continent into the chaos of World War I, a conflict fueled by the very nationalism that had been simmering for decades.
While nationalistic ghosts stirred up trouble in Europe, the continent was a cauldron of competing interests and ideologies. The ghost of empire haunted the halls of power, influencing decisions and shaping policies. The great powers of Europe, Britain, France, Germany, Russia, were locked in a global game of risk, carving up Africa, Asia, and the Pacific. Each nation sought to expand its influence and control, often at the expense of indigenous populations. Imperialism was about power, pure and simple, grabbing land, resources, and markets. The economic benefits were immense, with raw materials flowing into European factories and finished goods flooding colonial markets. By the early 20th century, the British Empire spanned a quarter of the globe, and the French had their own sprawling empire. These empires were symbols of national pride and strength, but they also brought about significant challenges. Empires were expensive, requiring vast armies, powerful navies, and bureaucratic machinery. The cost of maintaining these empires was enormous, both in terms of money and human lives. European powers, armed to the teeth and fueled by nationalism and imperial ambition, constantly bumped up against each other. The competition for dominance led to a precarious balance of power, with alliances and rivalries shifting frequently. The arms race was heating up, with new technologies making war more deadly than ever before. Innovations in weaponry, such as machine guns and dreadnought battleships, meant that any conflict would be devastating. In the summer of 1914, the fuse finally reached its end. The assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand of Austria set off a chain reaction, plunging Europe into the Great War. The world would never be the same again, as the discontents of imperialism and nationalism erupted into a conflict of unprecedented scale and destruction.
In the decades leading up to World War I, militarism became a religion in Europe. It It was about projecting power, having the biggest, baddest army, and glorifying war. The great powers poured more and more money into their military budgets, developing new and deadly weapons. Most believed any war would be short and decisive, envisioning glorious cavalry charges and lightning-fast offensives. They failed to grasp the destructive potential of modern warfare, including machine guns, artillery barrages, barbed wire, and poison gas. Blinded by their own hubris, they marched towards the abyss, dragging an entire continent with them. They thought they were playing a game, but they were playing with live ammunition, and the consequences would be catastrophic.
Surely someone tried to stop this madness, right? It seems almost inconceivable that the world could march so blindly into such a devastating conflict. Well, there were those who recognized the danger. Visionaries and peace advocates who foresaw the catastrophic consequences of unchecked nationalism and militarism. But their voices were drowned out by the drums of war and the intricate web of alliances that bound Europe together. The fervour for national pride and the belief in military might overshadow the calls for peace. The great powers forged alliances, each a solemn promise to defend their allies in the event of attack. These agreements were meant to create a balance of power, a deterrent against any single nation becoming too dominant. The Triple Alliance, Germany, Austria-Hungary, and Italy. This coalition was seen as a formidable force, a bulwark against potential threats from other nations. The Triple Entente, France, Russia, and Great Britain. Formed in response to the Triple Alliance, it was intended to counterbalance the power dynamics in Europe. These alliances, meant to maintain peace, became the chains that dragged Europe into war. Instead of preventing conflict, they created a situation where a localized incident could escalate into a full-scale war. Local conflicts transformed into global ones, as seen in the summer of 1914. The assassination of a single Archduke set off a series of events that no one could have predicted. The assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand set in motion a chain reaction that quickly spiraled out of control. What should have been a regional crisis became the spark that ignited a global conflagration. Within weeks, Europe was at war, the tangled web of alliances tightening around the neck of an entire continent. The hopes for a quick resolution faded as the reality of a prolonged and devastating conflict set in.
Let's talk about that spark, the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand. Picture the bustling streets of Sarajevo on a sunny June morning in 1914. The Archduke, heir to the Austro-Hungarian throne, is visiting the city with his wife, Sophie. Serbian nationalists, resentful of Austro-Hungarian rule, plot to assassinate the Archduke. Gavrilo Princip sees his opportunity, pulls out a pistol and fires, striking the Archduke and his wife. Both are mortally wounded and die within minutes. Austria-Hungary, outraged and seeking revenge, blames Serbia and declares war on July 28, 1914.
The month following the assassination was a whirlwind of diplomatic blunders, military mobilizations, and escalating tensions. Austria-Hungary, determined to crush Serbia, prepares for war. Germany offers its unconditional support. Russia, fearing for its Serbian ally, begins to mobilize its massive army. France, bound by treaty to Russia, pledges its support. Great Britain, initially hesitant, is drawn into the vortex. The violation of Belgian neutrality by German troops proves to be the final straw. On August 4, 1914, Great Britain declares war on Germany, turning a regional conflict into a global war.
As the calendar flipped to August 1914, a palpable sense of dread settled over Europe. The mobilization orders were out, millions of men were on the move, and the machinery of war proved impossible to stop. None of the great powers truly wanted a general European war. They thought it would be a short, sharp war, a decisive victory won in a matter of weeks. They were wrong, tragically, catastrophically wrong. They had miscalculated, misjudged, and underestimated the true nature of modern warfare. Millions of young men marched off to fight and die in a conflict they barely understood. While the guns roared on the battlefields, a different kind of battle was waged back home, a battle for hearts and minds. War isn't just fought on the front lines, it's fought in the factories, fields, newspapers, and parliaments. Governments cultivated a climate of fear and suspicion, demonizing enemies and whipping up nationalist fervor. Newspapers published stories of atrocities, real or imagined, committed by the enemy.
Politicians gave fiery speeches urging unity against the common foe. Dissent was met with swift and brutal repression. The home front provided the men, money, and material necessary to wage war. Governments manipulated public opinion, appealing to patriotism, duty, and a shared sense of sacrifice.
And there you have it, the main factors that led to the outbreak of World War I, a conflict so devastating that it forever shattered humanity's faith in progress and reason. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more historical insights.